Did you forget what today is? It's your sister-in-law's wedding! Hurry up and get over here! I was confused by the angry voice yelling at me over the phone. But my mother... Who cares? Besides, it's terrible luck to have a funeral on a day like this. My mother-in-law, Crystal, didn't even listen to the rest of what I had to say and expressed her anger towards my mother, who had recently passed away after a long illness. With the encouragement of my father, who seemed to have overheard the phone call, I ended up rushing to the wedding venue in tears. As a result, Crystal lost everything. I am Mandy, a 25-year-old office worker, and I've been married to my husband Jackson for 3 years. We live close to my in-laws, where Crystal and her daughter Amelia live together. My father-in-law Mike works away from home, so Amelia moved in to look after her mother. Although I get along well with Amelia, it seems that Crystal has not really liked me since before I got married, and we don't have a very good relationship. My mother had been in and out of the hospital with a long-term illness, and Crystal has been quite disapproving of this. You're not thinking about using Jackson's salary to pay for your mother's hospital bills, are you? She once asked me, casting a suspicious gaze. My mother was 55 years old, and my father was still very much active, so I explained multiple times that there were no financial concerns. However, she dismissed me with a snort, saying, "But you never know what might happen to your father, do you?" Since getting married, Crystal's attitude towards me has only gotten worse, and I've tried to endure all sorts of harassment and snide remarks. I've talked to Jackson about it several times, but he said, "I don't want to get involved in women's fights, so handle it yourselves." I couldn't show a strong attitude towards my mother-in-law because I was afraid that if I ended up divorcing Jackson, it would cause my mother unnecessary stress. The only person on my side in this situation was my sister-in-law, Amelia. She would stand up to Crystal's sarcastic remarks, saying, "Stop it! That's bride bullying! It's embarrassing!" She would also tell me, "If my mom does anything to you, just let me know and I'll talk to her." Jackson should be the one to do something about it, but since he's a bit of a conflict avoider and a coward, he probably won't do anything. While I was grateful for her support, I felt awkward complaining about Crystal to her actual daughter, so I continued to endure the harassment. Crystal's harassment started from the beginning of our marriage. At first, she would bring expired food to our house under the guise of sharing and say, "As the wife, it's your responsibility to take care of this. Just make sure not to let my son eat it." She would also make unannounced visits on my days off, nitpick our house cleaning, and point out any shortcomings in a nagging manner. However, her harassment escalated over time. She started ordering things online addressed to me, having them delivered to our home cash on delivery, and forcing me to pay the fees. She never reimbursed me and instead accused me of demanding money from her, saying, "It's just a little bit of money. You should pay for it. You really are a miserly person." By the way, the reason she had the packages addressed to me was apparently because the intercom at her house was broken. To be honest, it would be cheaper to pay for the intercom repair than the cash on delivery fee, so I've asked her several times. "I'll pay for the intercom repair, so please stop having packages delivered to our house." But she refused, saying, "I leave that kind of thing up to Mike, so don't do anything on your own." I talked to Jackson about this, but he brushed it off, saying, "The items she orders aren't that expensive, are they? We'll inherit her estate in the future, so just bear with it and pay for now." However, since I was paying from my own allowance, I asked him to increase our living expenses to cover the cost. He reluctantly agreed, making a sour face and saying, "How greedy can you be?" Crystal's attacks didn't stop there. Every time we saw each other, she would sigh and say, "Still no kids? You need to have an heir at some point, or else there's no point in having a daughter-in-law. My mother would regularly check in and ask, "How's married life?" But I didn't want to worry her, so I couldn't bring myself to share my problems, saying, "My husband and his family are all wonderful people, and I'm happy." I felt my frustrations building up with no outlet, and I could feel myself being pushed to the edge mentally. Feeling that I had reached my limit, I decided to take all the cash-on-delivery receipts to my in-laws' house to ask for reimbursement. When I arrived at their house, fortunately, Amelia greeted me and seemed surprised by my visit, asking, "What's going on?" I told her, "I need to talk to your mother." She seemed to sense something from my expression and accompanied me in the conversation with Crystal. This is the total of the cash-on-delivery fees I've paid up until now. If it was just a little bit, I would have been okay, but honestly, I'm receiving packages several times a week, and it's putting a lot of pressure on our finances. I'd like you to stop having them delivered to our house. As I showed her the receipts totaling nearly $2,300, Crystal pushed back, saying, "I can't pay that amount all at once." But Amelia, with a stern look on her face, asked, "What's going on?" and demanded an explanation. Because her intercom is broken, she's been having various items delivered to our house from online shopping. But all of them are cash on delivery, and I've been covering the cost and accepting the packages. But I haven't been reimbursed even once. Amelia, surprised by my words, exclaimed, "Why are you paying for the things Mom ordered? No wonder there have been more appliances and food we don't use lately. And you're saying the intercom is broken? But you rang the intercom today." I was taken aback by her words, and then I realized that the intercom wasn't actually broken. In other words, Crystal had lied and intentionally made me pay money as a form of harassment. Well, sometimes it really doesn't work when it's acting up, and it's not fair to have the delivery person come to the house multiple times because of that. Then you should just fix the intercom quickly. I've offered to pay for the intercom repair several times, but she says she can't do anything without her husband's permission. Mom, this is blatant bullying of your daughter-in-law. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? She sighed deeply after hearing my words and seemed to be fed up with her mother. In the end, she told her father about the situation, and he apologized and transferred an amount slightly more than the total of the receipts to my account, saying, "We've put you through a lot because of Crystal, so this is our apology." Since then, Amelia has been more attentive to me and often invites me to meals. During meals, she would often ask if her mother was still causing trouble, but after that incident, Crystal has calmed down a bit and only makes sarcastic remarks to me. So my conversations with Amelia gradually became more personal. In those conversations, I told her about my mother's long illness, my father taking care of her, and the fact that she had been given a terminal diagnosis. Amelia, in turn, told me that she had a partner she promised to marry and that her father would soon return from a work assignment alone. They planned to get married when he returned and then leave her parents' home. This went on for about a year. My father-in-law, Mike, returned home safely after finishing his work assignment, and Amelia became busy preparing for her wedding. In the midst of all that, as someone who had already had a wedding, I listened to her concerns and helped her with the preparations, sincerely celebrating her marriage. However, 2 days before her wedding, something happened while I was having lunch with her. I received an unusual message from my father informing me that my mother's condition had taken a sudden turn for the worse, and she was in critical condition. "You should come back as soon as possible." His voice over the phone was filled with tears, and my thought process seemed to have completely stopped, leaving me unable to think about anything. Amelia, noticing my state, gently asked, "What's wrong?" I hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was really appropriate to tell her who was about to get married. but ultimately I explained the situation out of a strong desire to see my mother. She then said, "Go to her quickly. You don't have to worry about my wedding. I'm really sorry that I can't cancel it since it's only 2 days away. Be with your mother. I'll explain everything to everyone else." With her kind words, I hurried back to my family home and went to my mother's side. As if waiting for my arrival, she briefly opened her eyes and said, "Thank you for coming." She squeezed my hand tightly and passed away peacefully the next day. My father and I managed to hold back our tears and see her off in her final moments. Then we were busy with the arrangements for her wake and funeral. I also contacted Jackson, telling him, "I'll be back once all the procedures are finished." The next day, I attended her funeral, breaking down in tears over memories with her, regrets for not having been able to give back to her enough, and the sadness of losing her. Then I received a phone call. It was from Crystal. As I was in the middle of the funeral, I intended to call her back later, but she kept calling repeatedly. Confused, I eventually answered the phone. "What on earth? Where are you right now?" I'm sorry. My mother passed away yesterday, so I am attending her funeral." "Did you forget what today is? It's Amelia's wedding. Hurry up and get over here." Confused by the angry voice yelling at me over the phone, I managed to stammer out, But my mother." However, I was yelled at even more. "Who cares? Besides, it's terrible luck to have a funeral on a day like this." I could feel the tears that I had been holding back start to overflow. My father, who was nearby, heard the yelling from the phone as well. "Are you alright?" Amelia was supposed to have explained the situation to her. "I'll take care of the funeral, so you go attend the wedding. Is there still time? If I leave now, I'll just make it. But this is my last goodbye to Mom. Your mother was happy just knowing that she saw you one last time. She wouldn't want you to ruin your relationship with your husband's family because of her. Go ahead and go." He gently persuaded me, and I hurried off to the wedding venue. I changed into the dress I had prepared at home, but my mood didn't lighten at all, and I couldn't hold back my tears even in the taxi to the venue. Somehow, I managed to calm my tears and entered the venue after checking in. As I headed to the restroom to check myself in the mirror, I happened to run into my father-in-law, Mike. "Mandy? What are you doing here? Is your mother alright? Amelia said you wouldn't be attending." "My mother passed away, and today was her funeral. I did let Jackson know that she had passed, but Crystal kept calling and insisting that I attend the wedding today. My father also told me to prioritize my relationship with Jackson's family, so I left the funeral to attend the wedding." "What? Did she say such an outrageous thing? I am so sorry." "No, I'm the one who should apologize for causing trouble on such a happy day. Crystal said it was bad luck, but there was nothing I could do." "Never mind that. Go back to your mother's funeral. I'm so sorry for making you come all the way here without even offering my condolences. You can come back when you're feeling better." With that, he handed me some money for transportation expenses, and I left the venue without entering. I changed back into my morning clothes and returned to my family home. Fortunately, the distance between my family home and the town where we live was less than an hour by car, so I was able to make it back in time. When I returned, my father and relatives were surprised, and they all asked me why I was back. As I apologized and explained in detail, some of my relatives took my side, expressing their anger at my mother-in-law, which somehow made me feel a little relieved. A few days later, when I was spending time at my family home, sorting through my mother's belongings and discussing my father's future living arrangements, I received another call from Crystal. Hey, what did you tell my husband? There seems to be a misunderstanding, so come back and clear it up, please. Although I was fed up with her message, I decided to put an end to the matter and headed to my in-laws' house after talking to my father. Jackson, my parents-in-law, and Amelia were waiting for me at their house, and we immediately started discussing the issue. Is it true that you left your mother's funeral and came to the wedding because of what my mother told you? That's just a misunderstanding, right? No, it's true. She told me to go to the venue. She also said that my mother's passing was bad luck and I can't take her words anymore. As I ignored Crystal and responded to Amelia, Mike asked me, "What's going on?" I showed him recordings of her previous insults, a list and photos of the spoiled food she had forced on me, and said, "I've been constantly given rotten food and told to deal with it because I'm the wife." I was also told that not giving birth to an heir meant I was failing as a wife. Even if the food was about to spoil, it was still edible. But you always told me never to let Jackson eat it, right? Also, as Amelia and Mike already know, I was not reimbursed for cash-on-delivery items, and when I talked to Jackson about it, he told me there was nothing he or I can do because we would receive an inheritance eventually. What have you two been doing all this time? You've done nothing but terrible things to Mandy. On top of that, you even interfered with her mother's funeral. He was furious upon hearing my words, and Amelia said, "Using my wedding as a tool for harassing my sister-in-law is truly despicable." She glared at her mother with contempt. I was really glad that I had kept records of Crystal's harassment just in case something happened. However, Jackson spoke up in defense of his mother. "There's no need for everyone to gang up and blame my mother. She must have had her reasons, right? Mandy, you didn't have to say all this here. If you had communicated more frequently, this situation wouldn't have happened in the first place. When I tried to talk to you about it, you always seemed annoyed and there was never any real discussion. Did you really think that she and I could have a conversation on our own?" "Well, that's because you always bring up those issues when I'm tired after work. There's no such thing as timing when it comes to family matters." Mike raised his voice in anger again. Then he told my mother-in-law, "Go back to your parents' place for a while. Since you've caused Mandy mental distress, you should pay her some compensation. Earn that money yourself. Mandy, how much would it take for you to forgive my wife?" No, it's not about the money." "No, if you don't decide, my father and I will." In the end, Mike and Amelia ordered Crystal to pay me $10,000 and decided that she would stay at her parents' place until she paid off the amount and not return to her house. I received an apology from Amelia and Mike, and I thought the matter was settled. But when I got home, Jackson said, "Mom has to go through a lot because you said too much." So I decided to get a divorce. I requested a divorce on the grounds of marital breakdown due to my husband's refusal to do anything about the harassment I received, and we successfully divorced. Crystal, who had been a housewife for a long time, started working part-time at a supermarket near her family home to pay the compensation. As for Jackson, he was disowned by his father, who told him, "Don't think you'll inherit anything." He contacted me, asking me to mediate between him and his father, but I only said, "You didn't do anything when I needed help, but you cling to me when it suits you. You're really shameless," and hung up the phone. Since then, I have moved back to my family home and live with my father, who is now alone. He seemed quite depressed after my mother passed away, and although he felt sorry for me about the divorce, he said, "I'm glad I can live with you again. From now on, I want to live a peaceful life by his side, supporting him as we move forward together."